Henry sat down in the worn velvet armchair, staring intently at the picture frame in his hands. The photo showed him and Margaret, smiling broadly, their arms entwined. Margaret had passed away a year ago, but the pain was still sharp, as if it had been yesterday. He sighed deeply, feeling the weight of loneliness in his chest. Emily entered the room quietly, watching her father with concern. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked softly, approaching and placing a hand on his shoulder. Henry nodded slowly, forcing a weak smile. "I'm fine, dear. Just remembering your mother." Emily sat down beside him, taking the photo from his hands. "I miss her so much, Dad. We all do." Henry looked into his daughter's eyes, seeing the same sadness reflected. "I know, Emily, and I know you all have your own lives, but there's something I need to do." "What is it, Dad?" Emily asked, worried. Henry took a deep breath before speaking. "Before I met your mother, I had a brief relationship with a woman. We had a child, but I never met him. I've always regretted that. And now, with your mother gone, I feel the need to find that child, to try and make peace with the past." Emily was surprised. "A brother? How did we never know about this?" Henry shook his head slowly. "I never talked about it. I didn't want your mother to think I was stuck in the past. But now I think it's time to try to find him." Emily held her father's hand. "Then let's look for him, Dad. You don't have to do this alone. Jonathan and I will help." Henry smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Emily. That means a lot to me." That night, Henry made the decision. He would go to the town where he had met the mother of his first child. It was a journey he needed to make, even if the chances of finding any clues were slim. He packed his bags carefully, each piece of clothing folded meticulously, reflecting the seriousness of his mission. The next morning, Henry said goodbye to Emily and Jonathan, promising to call regularly. The road seemed endless, but he kept his focus, each mile bringing memories to the surface. Arriving at the small coastal town, he went straight to the beach. The sound of the waves crashing on the sand brought a sense of déjà vu. Here, so many years ago, he had met a woman who had changed his life, even if only for a brief period. He began his search, asking in local restaurants and shops. "Sorry, sir, never heard of her." It was the constant response. After several frustrating attempts, Henry felt discouragement growing. Maybe it was impossible to find any information after so many years. The next day, Henry woke up early, determined not to give up. He walked along the beach, trying to remember any detail that could help. It was then that he saw a boy, no more than 9 years old, trying to cast a fishing net into the waves. The boy looked at him curiously. "Hi, mister. Are you new here? I've never seen you before." Henry smiled at the boy. "Yes, I'm visiting. My name is Henry. What's yours?" "Ethan," the boy replied excitedly. "What are you doing here?" Henry hesitated for a moment, but something about the boy made him want to be honest. "I'm looking for someone I met a long time ago." Ethan tilted his head, thoughtful. "Maybe I can help. I know everyone around here." Henry smiled sadly. "That would be nice, Ethan, but it's a complicated story." The boy looked at the fishing net and then at Henry. "Do you want to learn how to fish? I can teach you." Henry laughed, feeling a wave of tenderness for the boy's enthusiasm. "Sure, I'd love to." And so an unexpected friendship began. Every day, Henry and Ethan fished together at dawn. The boy was a cheerful and refreshing companion, bringing light to Henry's dark days. They talked about everything and nothing, and Henry began to feel a deep connection with Ethan. It was as if the boy filled a void he didn't even know existed. After a week, Ethan invited Henry to lunch at his house. Henry hesitated. "I have to go home soon, Ethan. I haven't found what I was looking for." Ethan insisted. "Please, it's just lunch, like a farewell." Henry couldn't resist the boy's insistence and agreed. They arrived at Ethan's humble house, where Sarah, the boy's mother, welcomed them warmly. Amid laughter and conversation, Henry felt a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. After lunch, Henry felt the need to be honest. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. I'm here looking for my son. I never met him." Sarah looked at him, surprised. Henry explained the whole story: the woman he had met on the beach, the son he had never known. Sarah was silent for a moment before speaking, tears in her eyes. "Ethan's father. He died 5 years ago in a car accident. And he was your son, Henry." Henry felt the world spin. Tears filled his eyes. He looked at Ethan, who was playing happily in the yard. "My grandson." Finally, he had found a part of his lost family. Henry felt a mixture of emotions as he watched Ethan playing in the yard. Sarah's revelation still echoed in his mind. He could hardly believe that the boy he had formed such a special friendship with was actually his grandson. He felt intense joy, but also a deep sadness for not having known his son. Sarah approached him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. She wiped the tears from her eyes. "Henry, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I wish you could have known your son. He was a wonderful man, an incredible father to Ethan." Henry nodded, still absorbing everything. "Tell me more about him, Sarah. Tell me about my son." Sarah sighed, sitting beside Henry on the small porch. "His name was Michael. He was always very caring and dedicated. He loved the sea just like Ethan. We used to come here and fish every weekend. When Ethan was born, Michael changed. He became even more loving and devoted. He was the kind of father everyone dreams of having." Henry closed his eyes, imagining the man Michael had become. "I've lost so much time. I wish I had been there for him." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I know, Henry. But now you have the chance to be there for Ethan. He needs you." Ethan ran to the porch, interrupting the conversation. "Grandpa, do you want to play ball with me?" Henry smiled at the boy. "Sure, Ethan. Let's go." As they played, Henry couldn't stop thinking about how fate had brought him there. It was as if he was being guided by something greater, an invisible force that connected him to his grandson. The following days were filled with precious moments. Henry and Ethan spent hours fishing, playing ball, and exploring the beach. Every day, Henry learned more about Michael through Ethan's stories. The boy proudly recounted how his father taught him to fish, swim, and always be kind to others. One night, while they were having dinner, Ethan looked at Henry with curiosity. "Grandpa, are you going to stay here forever?" Henry paused for a moment, considering the question. "Ethan, I want to stay here as long as possible, but I have my home in Miami. I would like you and your mom to come with me to meet the rest of the family." Sarah looked at Henry, surprised but also touched by the offer. "I don't want to impose, Henry. We have a life here." Henry shook his head. "It's not an imposition, Sarah. It's an invitation. I want Ethan to meet his uncles and for everyone to get to know each other. Besides, I would like to spend more time with you both." Sarah smiled, wiping away a tear. "I'll think about it, Henry. I promise." As the days passed, Sarah began to consider the idea of temporarily moving to Miami. She knew Ethan would love to meet Henry's family and also felt it would be good for everyone to connect. She finally made a decision. "Henry, we will go with you to Miami. Ethan needs to meet his family, and I want us all to spend more time together." Henry felt a wave of relief and joy. "Thank you, Sarah. This means a lot to me." On the day of their departure, Ethan was excited. He helped his mother pack the few things they would take to Miami. Henry was also eager, but felt a part of him still saddened for the son he never knew. He looked at the sea one last time before leaving, promising himself that he would do everything he could to be the best grandfather possible to Ethan. They arrived in Miami in the late afternoon. Emily and Jonathan were waiting eagerly. When they saw Ethan and Sarah, they ran to hug them. Emily, with tears in her eyes, hugged her father. "Welcome back, Dad, and welcome Sarah and Ethan. We are so happy to have you here." Jonathan smiled, holding his nephew's hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ethan. I'm sure we're going to get along great." Ethan, excited, looked around. "Aunt Emily, Uncle Jonathan, I'm happy to be here." In the days that followed, Henry's house was filled with laughter and joy. Ethan adapted quickly, charming everyone with his energy and kindness. Sarah found a new job at a nearby cafe, while Henry spent as much time as possible with his grandson. One night, after putting Ethan to bed, Henry sat with Sarah on the porch. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything, for bringing Ethan into my life." Sarah smiled, holding his hand. "Thank you, Henry, for welcoming us and making us feel like part of your family." Henry looked at the starry sky, feeling a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. The atmosphere in Henry's house subtly shifted in the days following Ethan and Sarah's arrival in Miami. While Ethan explored every corner of the house with childlike enthusiasm, Henry's adult children, David and Laura, began to feel the tension mounting. Both were concerned about the impact of Ethan's presence on their father's life. David, the eldest, sat with Laura in the living room one afternoon, sharing his concerns in a hushed voice. "Laura, I know Dad is happy to have found Ethan, but have you noticed how he's been taking more medications lately? What if Ethan ends up overwhelming him?" Laura nodded, understanding her brother's dilemma. "I know, David. I'm worried about that too. Dad isn't young anymore, and taking care of a child can be a lot of work for him. But we can't just separate Ethan and Dad after everything that's happened." As they discussed, Sarah, Ethan's mother, overheard part of the conversation from the hallway. She felt a pang in her heart upon realizing that David and Laura were worried about Henry's well-being. Determined to clarify things, she called for a meeting that night, gathering everyone in the living room. Seated around the coffee table, Henry looked at his children seriously while Ethan played in the corner of the room. Sarah spoke first, choosing her words carefully. "David, Laura, I understand your concerns, but I want you to know that I never intended to separate Henry from you. He is Ethan's grandfather, but he is also your father, and I deeply respect that connection." David and Laura exchanged glances, recognizing the sincerity in Sarah's words. Henry intervened gently, maintaining a calm tone. "Kids, I know this is new for all of us, but I want you to be reassured. I'm not planning to permanently move to the beach. I want to spend time with Ethan, but I also want to be here with you." David sighed in relief, feeling the weight lift off his shoulders. "Dad, we just want to make sure you're okay. You know how your health has been a challenge." Laura nodded in agreement. "Yes, Dad, we love Ethan too. We just wanted to make sure you wouldn't be overwhelmed." Henry smiled, feeling the love and concern of his children. "I understand, my dears, and I appreciate your concern for me and Ethan. I promise to organize my time to be with all of you. I'll divide my life between the beach and the city so we can all be together in the best way possible." Ethan, who had been playing quietly until then, looked up at his grandfather with a radiant smile. "Grandpa, you're staying with me?" Henry nodded, feeling a comforting warmth. "Yes, Ethan. I'll be with you, and I'll also be with David and Laura. We'll find a way to make this work for everyone." That night, after the meeting, Henry and Sarah sat together in the garden, gazing at the stars. Sarah placed her hand over Henry's, feeling a deep relief. "You did the right thing, Henry. They needed to hear from you that you love and value them." Henry smiled, looking at the night sky. "I love my children, Sarah, and now I love my grandson too. I'm grateful to have all of you in my life." As the night wore on, the house was filled with a sense of unity and understanding. David and Laura, though still concerned, felt more confident that their father was taking care of himself and his family in a balanced way. Ethan fell asleep in the living room, dreaming of adventures with his beloved grandfather, while Henry and Sarah shared a moment of peace and gratitude for what the future held for them. At the end of that quiet night, Henry felt a deep gratitude for the journey he had taken. He thought about the challenges he had faced throughout his life, from the loss of his beloved wife to the thrilling discovery of his lost grandson. The journey had led him to moments of pain, but also to precious encounters and renewed connections with his family. Sitting next to Sarah, Henry reflected on the strengths of this story now unfolding before him. It was a story of love, loss, and rediscovery. It was about the family bonds that span generations, about how time and distance can separate but also reunite. It was about the courage to move forward despite adversities and the importance of opening one's heart to new possibilities. Looking to the future, Henry felt a comforting warmth in his chest. Ethan, his grandson, had brought a renewed light into his life, a reminder of the power of love and family connection. He knew that from now on, every moment shared with his family would be precious, each laugh and each tear a testament to the strength of the bond that united them. Then Henry looked at Sarah with a tender smile. She smiled back, knowing that together they had helped build a new story for their family. With a gentle squeeze of her hand, Henry whispered, "Thank you for being by my side, Sarah. I couldn't have done this without you." And so the night turned into memory, a memory of love and renewal, of bonds that grow stronger with time, and of hope that blooms even in the darkest moments. If you were moved by Henry, Ethan, and their family's journey, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and like this video so you don't miss the upcoming exciting stories. Your participation means a lot to us, and we look forward to sharing more stories that touch your heart and inspire your soul. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for following this story to the end. Until the next thrilling journey.